Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Antiquity, and welcome to Tom Clancy's The Division, The Review. So I realized after watching that first video of mine again, I didn't really give you guys a whole lot in terms of a review in regards to a lot of the other aspects in this game that are kind of a major part of it. So I had covered the options menus in that first video, and I'll put a link down below to make sure you guys go check that out. I cover those options quite in detail as to what you can do in terms of settings for video and audio, various other number of things that the system will let you do. What I didn't give you, though, was kind of my thoughts and a review on the combat system and then moving around in the environment as well. So the combat of the game is actually really pretty straightforward. Just like any other standard first-person shooter that you might run across, it's just going to be kind of a point and shoot. You've got a variety of number of weapons. After looking at some of the information about the game and the types of weapons that are available, I feel that it's certainly got a wide range of it. There are sniper rifles, so that the build I was going for will be available to me. You got your submachine guns, assault rifles, pistols, shotguns, and things of that nature. So definitely a wide variety of weapons to choose from and modify, which would definitely be another perk that I would say is kind of cool to the game. While it seems somewhat generic in what it's doing, the ability to modify your weapon kind of on the fly is really kind of a cool mechanic that I thought they did really well in putting in. In terms of the actual combat and then the enemies that you face, it does seem like it does take a fair amount of bullets to drop into an enemy for them to actually go down. But something, I guess, to keep in mind is that the health levels are actually quite a little bit higher. You look at your own player's health level, and it's somewhere in the thousands. So you kind of got to anticipate that your enemies are probably somewhere thereabouts, making it kind of a more realistic combat that you might run across, or a more realistic scenario that could come up. Takes a bunch of bullets for you to go down. Shouldn't be a whole lot of a stretch to expect the same for your enemies as well. The missions themselves, so far, from what I've seen, the variety is really kind of cool. Definitely run across a lot of this kind of secure the area or you know, make sure we get these supplies back to your home base or safe points and whatnot. I imagine there'll be some other missions available in the future, or just kind of as you get further into the game, that will change as far as objectives goes, of things you got to do, bring people back or collect things, that kind of thing, kill a certain number of enemies, that type of deal, just things you would expect out of a regular MMO RPG of some sort. Because while this is an MMO first-person shooter, it's definitely got a lot of RPG elements to it. You know, you change out your gear, you pick up new gear, you set your skills and abilities and so on and so forth. So definitely a lot of RPG elements, which will certainly attract a lot of people who enjoy RPG style of games. Now, one of the other things that I definitely think was a positive, and something we actually see Ubisoft doing a lot of, especially lately in their games, is kind of providing this home-style base that's available to you. Something you can take and customize and kind of build out to your own. And The Division doesn't do anything different. They actually do something very, very similar. You have a home base, and you can modify it. Although I'm not going to go into details as to what you can do. You'll just have to check out the videos, because we actually go through bringing up our home base and making it work. I would say that the voice acting they did is fairly top-notch. All of the cut screens that I have seen thus far have been really top quality. I guess the only kind of bummer is that there is, once again, your main player without a voice. Something I have to wonder that if Ubisoft either overlooked or didn't do that on purpose. It's definitely one of those things that would be kind of cool to see, but at the same point in time, while not having that voice, you kind of really get that total immersion that you're just listening to these guys talk and going through these cutscenes as if you were the player. Now, as far as interacting with the environment, running around and moving and such, I think in order to get the best possible experience that you can do, you do have to make a couple of changes into the settings. There's a setting called parkour mode that, if you're familiar with the Assassin's Creed style of games, it's basically as you're running, you just start sprinting over objects and whatnot. Otherwise, without that mode enabled, you actually get stopped by those objects, which can be a pain in the ass if you don't have the finger dexterity to, you know, come off of keys or the timing and whatnot. It just becomes a bit of a pain to have to deal with that. So you can change that, and you can just start kind of booking over objects as you move and go forward. Along with that, though, is the sprinting option and how it is currently set. So when you load the game and don't change any of the defaults, sprint is set by, it's just a toggle. Turn it on, turn it off. As opposed to a lot of other FPS games or just any other, you know, major action-adventure games, you usually have to press and hold the key. Again, it's an option that you can change. You can set it so that you do have to press and hold it. And if you're used to Assassin's Creed style of games or any other, you know, game of that type, I would encourage you to disable the toggle mode and switch it over to press to hold while you're sprinting. It makes it a little bit easier, and I think the control is a little bit better in terms of your character. You're able to get up and over objects when you need to, but at the same point in time, you can stop yourself without having to worry about having to tap the key again. Because unfortunately, when it's set to toggle and you press it, it stays on until you toggle it off. Now, as far as NPCs go and just general ambiance of the game, I think they did a really good job. There was a lot of detail that was put into it. You know, as you play through the game, you hear a lot of side conversations, even though they may or may not be within your view. They definitely put some thought into this. Now, in terms of graphics, I have to give this game just kind of top-notch in terms of how well they put everything together. The textures are fantastic. Nothing seems kind of hokey or cartoony. Everything seems fairly realistic. Some of the bigger challenges that developers have when it comes to graphics are usually reflections. You know, water reflections, how water reacts, and things of that nature. And as you go through the game and you see it, you can see a lot of reflections in just like windshields of cars, windows, you know, any type of puddle. They did a really great job. The graphics truly are top-notch. Although I have to imagine that that's going to diminish quite a little bit if you're running lower graphic settings. In terms of the user interface itself, I do happen to enjoy how they did it, rather than it kind of taking over your entire screen and it just becomes this whole separate type of menus that you have to go through. It makes it seem like it's actually something that your player is pulling up, kind of a holographic interface that it can interact with. Definitely gives you that feeling that the Division is kind of this top elite group of people that have access to some of the best technologies. You know, overall control of your character and how you move it, weapon switching, combat and such, very reactive, very responsive. I don't happen to notice, at least when I'm playing, I don't see a lot of kind of delay between my commands and what my character actually does. Something I would like to point out is that in this type of environment, you know, this type of game, this kind of post-apocalyptic almost environment, you would expect to be able to see or find a lot more in the way of just consumables and various items across the map, but it actually only seems to be a couple of places so far that I've seen that actually have valuables. You know, they seem to be pretty few and far between. Not something I would expect out of a game that has this type of theme or this type of genre, this type of time frame. That just seems a little off to me. Overall, I do find this game very enjoyable, and I do encourage that if you have the means to do so, to go ahead and pick up this game. It is well worth your time. Something to point out, though, and keep in mind is that this game really is best played with other people. I have noticed so far that a great number of the missions do require more than just yourself to get through them. I have no doubt there are going to be some very hardcore players that can produce just kind of solo builds and playthroughs, but I think you're missing out on some of the enjoyment if you do it that way. No doubt the game has a good matchmaking system, and it does work really quite well. Most of the people that I've run into and interacted with have been very positive. I don't see any type of kind of bad backlash or people saying, "What are you doing, noob? Learn to be better at the game." Everybody realizes that it's brand new and we all got to start somewhere. So even if you don't have friends and you're just playing by yourself like myself, don't be afraid to use the matchmaking system. It really does work quite well so that you can get teamed up with other players to get through some of these more complicated missions that have a lot more enemies. As kind of a last final thought, something to keep in mind is that this game is following the same model that a lot of games do these days, in the aspect that you buy the main game and you do have access to a lot of the content, but it isn't all of the content. They use a season pass. That season pass, I think right now, is about $30, and it will unlock all of the material that will ever come up in the future. Nice thing about season passes. The game version that I picked up was the Gold Edition, so it does include the Season Pass. So if you picked up the Gold Edition of any level, fear not, all of your content will be unlocked as they release it. And I have no doubt they are planning some fairly large updates in the future. It is kind of a little bit of a bummer that those features were not released in the main game, especially if they're, you know, large, like trading or microtransactions of some sort, both of which are not currently in the game. It sucks that they have to release it that way, or they're going to release it that way, and you would, in theory, have to pay for it. Although, if you have, like I said, if you have that season pass, you're good to go, and you'll have access to those as soon as they come out. So definitely something to bear in mind. While you may want to spend about $60 to pick it up now, at some point in time in the future, you're probably going to want to get the Season Pass so that you have access to all the DLC without having to pay for them one at a time, which would probably be quite a bit more than just paying the Season Pass. So I do hope that you found this review useful in whether or not you want to pick up this game or not. My recommendation would be that if you do enjoy first-person shooters and MMO style of games, and have ever wanted to see one in kind of connection with each other, I definitely encourage you to pick up this game. It is well worth your time. But make sure you're also picking up the Season Pass as well. This way you have the unrestricted access to all of the content, and you don't miss anything. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you in the next one.